Here's your preview.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Certainly appreciate your attendance. It's 3 reasons SCADA software is going nowhere. My name is Don Pearson, and I serve as the Chief Strategy Officer with Inductive Automation. Many of you have been with us throughout the year at our webinars. I just wanted to say, at least at starting today's webinar, a little bit of a thank you for your attendance. We try and bring a webinar every month. This is our last webinar of the year. And as I look down the list, I see a lot of new faces and a lot of folks who have been with us and giving us feedback and helping us with topics as the year has unfolded. For those of you who are new, Inductive Automation brings you Ignition, which is a licensed by the server, web-based, cross-platform, HMI, SCADA, MES software platform that, as those of you who know us, gives you incredible flexibility to innovate, solve the problems if you're a systems integrator, if you're customers, or if you're a manufacturer, the customers, or the solutions that you're looking for yourself. Today's webinar will focus on 3 reasons SCADA software is going nowhere. I do also want to say that for those of you who have been with us and given us feedback, thank you for that feedback, and we welcome it here at Inductive Automation and really want to include as much as we possibly can your interest when we're putting together webinars, be they on white papers, be they on new releases, and often, as you know, there are featuring a solution from a systems integrator with a customer or one of you as manufacturers with your solutions. We want to continue to do that as we move forward throughout 2012. For today, I want to start with the bottom line. I'm going to end with the bottom line. Companies are demanding tools for better internal collaboration. Collaboration requires access by everyone. Existing manual processes need to be emulated in software. Having real-time information for real-time responses is now mandatory, and frankly, solutions need to be rolled out rapidly and cost-effectively. So if we look at our agenda for today, it's really pretty simple. 3 points on the agenda. I do want to say that we've gathered together what I would say is a pretty strong panel. So we're going to have a little virtual panel today, and I'm going to introduce the panelists now as we go into the agenda, because I'm going to be basically, to give you a sense of how this will unfold, I'll be going back and forth with the panelists, asking you guys questions. You'll be responding to the questions, but I also want to encourage all of you in attendance to use your console question area, type in your questions as you have them, and as we go through, we're leaving a good chunk of time at the end to be able to get to all those questions. So we have a bunch we're going to go through as we look through a few slides here, but it's really setting the stage to really expand more to the questions that you have as we go through the last 15 to 20 minutes of the presentation. I have with us here 2 integrators, Kyle Chase and Jack Cromer, who in combination have, I'm not going to date you guys too much, but over half a century of experience in controls and engineering and system integration in industrial software area. And then Tom Heckman is the MES channel sales engineer with Inductive Automation. And Kevin McCluskey is a design support engineer. So we've got some engineering, some system integration. And then I've also asked Carl to join us, who's our lead developer. And so he's going to chime in a couple of times on a couple of slides and maybe address any questions you may have at the end also. So with that, the agenda is IT versus SCADA technologies. Traditional SCADA software is not enough anymore, and 3 ways to leverage IT technology and gain the competitive advantage. I'd like to start with I'm not just kind of call on you guys. You can obviously chime in also, but I'll sort of call on different individuals I think might be able to address this comparison of the SCADA world in the 1990s era technology and really the IT world 2011 technology and beyond as we evolve. And this slide is just sort of there to sort of say, yes, we were, this is where we are. Get your guys' comments on it from your various perspectives. So in the first one there, flat file storage, time series data only, in the IT world now, SQL databases, relational data. Tom, I'm going to just throw that first one to you and your comments on that evolution, what that point is saying.
Yeah, if we think back in the 90s and even in the early 2000s too, it still existed. But typically you had smaller databases that weren't true SQL databases. They tend to be slow, limited on the amount of data that you can collect. In the SCADA world, you saw a lot of proprietary databases to try to get around that, which kind of locks down your data and doesn't make it accessible. You saw a lot of spreadsheets, Microsoft Access type applications and stuff like that. In the 2000s, it's much different. You know, we have SQL databases now that are affordable, used by many industries, financial, all kinds of industries, because they perform so well and they handle so much, such large amounts of data. They all also are very open, so it's not, you can encrypt them if you want, it's up to you, but they're very open and other programs can use them. It allows for a lot more collaboration.
That's great. Thanks. And it's a good just a snippet on that. So let's take a look at the next one there. Client individually installed. DCOM or other proprietary protocols, and then web servers, HTTPS protocols. So Kevin, can you give us a little comment on that, the evolution there?
Yeah, in the SCADA world, you used to have to install clients individually, and you go around each of your individual machines that are sitting down on the plant floor, and any update that you had, you'd give straight to that machine, so you had to do all the configuration there. There wasn't really a central place that you'd be storing all your information. In the IT world, you've got a web service or a web server where you can actually store all the configuration, all the OPC item paths, everything that's associated with your projects, and that can then be transmitted out to all these clients really seamlessly.
Great, thanks. The next one, clients deployed in hours versus clients deployed in seconds anywhere. Kyle, let's get an integrator perspective on that. Can you comment on that and your experience with that?
Yeah, you know, as an integrator that has to deal with 24/7 support, for me being able to pretty much be anywhere, be on like vacation or whatnot, and someone needs help, I can quickly tie in or get one of our other people to tie in. But it really comes down to just flexibility. Your architecture can change drastically. You can support people at the main office, and you can just give them a link to download the client from. It doesn't take hours to install. It just caches the project from the server, and it makes our life a lot easier, and probably makes IT guys' life a lot easier. So.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Next one, licensing. Licenses for each client and server individually versus licenses by the server or one flat price. Jack, I know we've had you speak on a couple of the webinars talking about some customers you worked with. Can you comment on this?
Yes. The licensing methods of a lot of the traditional HMI products has been such that you have to have server and the client licenses, so that every time you wanted to display this on another server or on another client, you'd have to pay another $3,000 to $5,000 to use the same stuff you've already built. And we've had tremendous numbers of projects that look like great projects that were killed because of the cost of the software. So this, having it licensed by the server so that every time that you think of a new application you could bring into the system, you no longer have to worry about that you got to spend another $3,000 to $5,000 to display it on another computer. So it's spectacular.
Thanks, Jack. I do know that when you take a look at the software and its capabilities, you have to put it in a business and licensing model that allows it to be user-friendly for integrators and the end users, so they actually don't get stifled in what they're trying to do because of considerations over tag, license fees, clients, and every single addition becomes a consideration when one's looking at budgets. So thank you on that. Let's go to the next one. Jack, why don't you comment on that one too? No database applications except with major hacking in the old SCADA world of the 90s era, and now rapid development of rich database applications.
Yeah, I've talked about our little company blurb is total systems integration from factory floor to annual report. The factory floor was always pretty easy with all the products that were out there, but database, saving data to a relational database and then being able to bring the data back out and display it was horrible. I mean, it was, yeah, we could do it, but it was absolutely painful. And now with the rapid development software that's available, we can save the data away to the relational database and bring it back into the system and display it, analyze it, use it, share it easily.
Great, thanks. I appreciate that. Let's do a couple of more of these, and then we'll get into some of the 3 reasons why. So if you look at the next one, I'm going to ask for some comments on this too. Kyle, why don't you comment on the first one there? Limited and proprietary connectivity in the 90s era technology and open connectivity in the IT world of 2011.
Yeah, you know, everyone's business model today is driven off of data and information. So, you know, in the SCADA world, you used to be able to connect to a PLC or whatever the platform was predefined to connect to. With Ignition, you can pull data in from PLCs, you can pull it from databases, you can, you know, create your own interfaces to bring data in. So if you want to scrape the web for information, you can do that. Pretty much you can connect to really anything that has some form of connectivity to it, being based off of Java. So it's just opening the world to eliminate separate data islands, separate like banks of data, and the ability to pull it all together into one seamless application.
Great, thanks. Jack, how about another comment from you on the simple trending of the 90s era and rich analysis and display of relational data in the IT world of today?
Sure. When I started, all we had were paper charts that we could look at, and then with the HMI coming in the 90s and the 2000s, we got trending, which was a lot better than the paper charts to look at, but it was still limited in that you can display it on the screen and maybe print it out, and in some cases try to get the data out of the chart, put it into something like Excel or something to analyze it. But now we can, you know, like I did a transaction group a couple weeks ago that was every 20 milliseconds going into Microsoft SQL Server, and I was able to, you know, analyze that data with a number of different things that can get to Microsoft SQL Server. So sure, we still have great trending, but we have the ability to get the data out of it and utilize it.
Great, thanks, Jack. And the maintenance distributed across many workstations versus centralized maintenance and the impact on that. Tom, give your experience on that particular point.
Yeah. Well, in the IT world, it's all about centralized maintenance. You know, they have limited resources a lot of times, and they have to make the best of them. So if you can, you know, maintain your system centrally, it makes a big difference. You know, in the 90s, like Kevin said earlier, you have to install on each client. Even if you're remoting into that client, you have to spend the time to do that. And in the 2011s and beyond here, we're web launched, and no effort updates and such are required. And some solutions have been out there where, like, terminal services is an option to kind of provide that, but that is very heavy on the server and requires a lot more equipment. And then also, you know, which program do you go to access to make configuration changes? How many different programs do you have to go to do a backup? You know, centralized maintenance takes care of these things and makes it a lot easier.
Great, thanks. I appreciate that, Tom. And Kevin, you take the last one, limited security options, full spectrum of standard IT security methods in the new world.
Yeah, the older SCADA technology, the traditional SCADA setup has been to have your set of users that you define inside the software, and you'll have your communication that all happens inside the software. The newer stuff, the IT world, we can integrate with just about anything. We can integrate with Active Directory. We can talk to anything that, you know, talks over LDAP. Any of these standardized security methods we're able to integrate with now. And we can, one of the nice things I found is we can go to IT departments and say, hey, you know, we have software and it's going to run on this IP, it's going to run on these ports, and they say, okay, we'll go with our own security methods, and we'll limit, you know, the setup on this server, and we'll limit the ports that have access to this, and we'll give priority to
find then that the relationship, certainly we've talked about this in other webinars, the relationship with the IT department is a smooth, welcome relationship because you're not bringing them problems when you use a technology that allows them to have the security and the control of their systems that's required on their part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we used to butt heads with, with IT department a lot, and at this point, we're finding that they're pretty happy with working with our software because we can speak their language. We can say, this is what we're going to be using. This is what we're going to be going with. We're doing HTTP, HTTPS. We're integrating with your security setup and your security software and your security methods, and they seem to jump right on board.
Sure. I know Jack's mentioned this also when he talks about his byline of everything from the plant floor all the way to, the back office to the executive suite. You got to be using common technology and common applications in order to have everybody on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the problems. There are three major factors holding manufacturers back, this sort of brick wall, if you will, and each of them actually are prime areas for opportunity, if you will. So traditional SCADA software is just too purpose-specific, and it's really stalled in its advancement, as evidenced by even just the comments were made on these various bullet points on the last couple of slides. And I wanted to do those slides and get each of our panelists to sort of speak a little bit so that you, as the attendees, know that there's a variety of expertise here you can tap on. So I really think anything from a process question to a technology question, I think we got panelists who've had the experience to be able to answer those for you. The second barrier, besides the software being too purpose-specific, is tedious implementation. And the last major barrier is traditional licensing models that just happen to stifle projects. And all of these can be turned into opportunities for companies to move ahead in their industries and actually to gain a competitive advantage. So let's just take a look at them as we go through. First, the traditional SCADA to purpose-specific. You've got discrete controls, PLC value monitoring, set point entry, animated graphics, simple trending. These actual traditional SCADA software can deliver some good data, but the challenge is you can't do much with it other than know a few stats in isolation and not in relation. So this leaves manufacturers with a whole lot of unanswered questions. So the SCADA software, though it was originally designed to control and monitor automated machinery, is doing that. But as such, it just performs standard SCADA functionality from stop and start on the controls, the numeric entry fields, set points, animated graphics, simple trending, the things you guys have talked about. And really, it pretty much stops there. Nothing much has changed since the 90s. It's a little strange that newer IT advances haven't really fully made their way into the industrial control realm. So IT, it offers a big boost to SCADA data. You can get much richer data, and you can get a whole lot more innovation and flexibility when you move that direction. So if we look at that as though that was the existing scene, getting ahead means you have to be able to leverage databases. So I'm gonna throw a couple of questions in that direction. I think the first thing I'd say is overall, Tom, I've heard about databases opening up the collaborative aspect for companies. Can you comment a little bit about that collaborative aspect versus the discrete information that doesn't facilitate that collaboration?
Yeah, no, exactly. If you're just controlling a line, start, stop, your set points and things like that, maybe a batch operation, that's very specific. But now, in today's world, people are wanting to get more information. They want to get the quality information tied into that a little more seamlessly versus a separate program that the lab uses only. They want to get traceability information going. They want to get preventive maintenance tied in more realistically. Even time cards on the computers on the same system versus a separate system, and everything being separate. So being able to tie everything together in a common platform, just one, it cuts down on the amount of programs that you need, but this is more seamless. The users don't have to click different icons and learn different programs. Maintenance and configuration is all done from the same platform, which just greatly simplifies that. So we're just seeing this trend where there is a great desire for this type of functionality, these types of solutions, and the traditional SCADA just fell short. And newer technologies, web and IT technologies, are really the answer to answer the question for these solutions.
Great, thanks. I want to dig in a little bit. Maybe, Jack, you've commented on this before, but when you look at the difference between historical data, historians, and data-rich applications with historians, can you give a little comment on that difference and how that improves your ability to help your customers?
Sure. You know, I've used a number of different historians over the years, and they're always, you know, sort of a side to the original product. And within what's been done with Ignition, we really have a full-blown historian. And recently I was asked to quote one of the other company's historians and Ignition as a historian, and the other company with all of our services and stuff would have been about $80,000, and with Ignition it was $30,000. And we are saving into Microsoft SQL Server all 25,000 tags. 18,000 are going in at 1 second. 8,000 are going in. No, yeah, 16,000 are going in at 1 second. 8,000 are going in at 250 milliseconds, and 50 of them are going in every 20 milliseconds. And it does it in its sleep. And the guys have started using the HMI because they like it so much and are sort of abandoning their installed one. So it's just amazing to have this all going into a standard Microsoft SQL Server database instead of a proprietary database.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Jack. That's a very good example. Tom, I want to ask you to make a comment here on what does the term database-centric mean? How are we applying that in terms of all of the applications we're looking at here?
Well, just about all programs that store data use a database, and that stored data is going to be available to just that program or available to other programs. So database-centric is you have the database at the center, and these different programs can access and get the data from that. Now, you may not want to do that in all situations, but it does open the door to providing some great solutions that people are asking for.
Great, thanks. You know, I know that Jack has made the comment before that your whole business is a database, but it's just got this database here and this database there and this database there, all discrete and unconnected. So, Jack, talk a little bit about the power of being able to bring those databases together in a relational way rather than having your database of your company really be 20 distinct separate databases.
Sure. It's, you know, what I've said, and it's not an exaggeration. Your life or your company is a database, and your database is in a company reside in a program or in a filing cabinet, a spreadsheet, or in somebody's head. And it's been difficult in the past to tap those things or bring them into where everybody can look at it. With the web-based application that's database-centric, we can start moving those, you know, databases that are not even, that they're sitting in a file drawer into the system and make it available to everybody. And it's critical in that you don't have to throw away all the you know, your processes that you've developed. You can adapt them and put them into this, into the Ignition program, which is the database-centric program. It's just, you know, there's all that data sitting out there somewhere, and if you can get it in the same spot, you can mine it and make everything more effective and efficient.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Just, Kevin, I'm going to ask you this question. It's a little bit of a loaded question because we got on the slide here. Best way to learn about SQL databases, but, you know, we have a little bit of a second bullet point, which is faster way to learn about Ignition. So, you know, that's a little bit of an angle. We're obviously slightly biased here because we've taken all of the work and put it into development of Ignition. But you have someone here who wants to learn about SQL databases and database applications. Quick answer on how they can do a better job of that?
Sure. Well, one thing I'd suggest would just be taking and going and downloading either Microsoft SQL Server Express or MySQL, and just installing it and playing with it. They're both free software packages, and the simple stuff with SQL, if you're just doing regular stuff with databases, it's really simple. It's really easy to learn. There are hundreds of sites out there that you can just Google and you can find out, how to write a select statement, how to get data out of a database, and that will cover 95% of what you need to do with any of your SCADA software. Yeah, and you can install and get Ignition up and running, and Ignition with transaction groups will automatically do a lot of that database stuff for you. It'll automatically create tables. It'll automatically put that data in there, and then all you've got to do is grab the data out of there. Yeah, if you're looking at how to learn databases, I just suggest taking a look at the information out there. There's literally thousands of how-tos and information everywhere.
Thanks, appreciate that. Kyle, just to comment from you from the integration side of it, I know we've said at different times you should never avoid IT. IT should be your friend. Historically, they haven't always been our friend. When you look at controls engineering's history in the old world, how do you best approach IT folks, and how do you work smoothly with them?
Our biggest thing is that we normally do is we point out the fact that Ignition is built on industry standards, IT standards being Java, SQL, XML, SSL. Now, those are all things those IT guys like and stuff that they're quite familiar with. Take that another level to the networking architecture where it's client-server based, and it just seems very familiar to them, and they're very comfortable working in that environment and working with us getting our applications built.
Great, thanks, Kyle. So let's take a look at the next one, traditional SCADA tedious implementation. It was mentioned in the comparison side at the beginning, long installations, repetitive tasks on multiple client machines. I mean, people joke around here, you create carpal tunnel syndrome just from trying to update things here. So you've got platform incompatibility issues, including all the different versions of Windows, license activation hassles, backup and restoration headaches. Why waste your time on these when you could be solving real problems? So if we look at that, let's move to sort of a solution, getting ahead by leveraging web technology. Learn about web servers and web technology. Learn about Ignition, which is what we base it on. Install the software once on a server. Use collaborative development tools, which are also web launch. Securely launch clients anywhere in your network with Java Web Start. Update all clients and client applications instantly with a mouse click, and leverage Java to eliminate platform incompatibilities. What this means is when you do this, it speeds up implementation and deployment time, and you get to spend a lot more time on meaningful development of your SCADA system, meaningful innovative work with your customers. So it's important note to make that web-based technology should also be cross-platform. So if we take a look at this, as you look at this area, Tom, just to comment from your side, what changes in your workflow when you switch from multiple installation type SCADA software to a web-based type of software? How's the workflow change?
I think the number one thing that you have to look at is just how much time it takes. It may be the frustration level too. You know, when you are spending time updating systems and DCOM configuration, and do we have the right ActiveX components, and going around to each machine and upgrading it, even if you use remote desktop or something to upgrade, that all takes a lot of time. Where if you go to the web-based, you know, it's so nice where if there's an update to the software, like in a case of Ignition, the clients all detect that and upgrade. If you change your project, the clients go, you know, different methods to do it, but the clients can have a notification, or you can do it automatically and upgrade the project. You don't need to go out to multiple clients or worry about them or test them. It just works, and it just reduces the amount of time and frustration.
Great, thanks. I'm curious, having worked with these for a long time, either Kyle or Jack, maybe I'll start with you, Jack, and anyone else of our panelists can chime in if they want to too. But why is it difficult for these SCADA companies to make their software run on every OS? Why is that so hard for them to do that? Jack, do you have a comment on that?
I'm not sure. It's just that they have such an investment, most of them, in, you know, whatever platform they've originally developed, and they didn't think about that when they did that. So they have to almost start over, and I don't think many of them are willing to do that because they've got such large investments in the, the foundations of their technology.
So it's not really so much that they're not capable of doing it, it's just that their business model is invested in another direction, and they can't turn the battleship, if you will, very easily to accommodate the customer's needs.
Correct.
Yeah. Kyle, do you have any comments on that in terms of this sort of the leveraging of web technology? I'll ask for any comments from you, and then Kevin, anything you may want to comment on this solution.
Yeah, using the web technologies, it kind of goes back to the last question as to why they haven't moved to another OS. A lot of the systems that we primarily deal with are OPC based, which thereby relies on PCOM, which is a Windows technology. So they've been programming against that for the last 10, 15 years. So for them to all of a sudden switch their whole application over, it pretty much means rewriting. Throw in the fact that each different operating system has its own architecture, and you have to compile for each OS. That's probably another thing that slows them up. But like why they wouldn't want to do that is it has to be business based. They just don't want to spend the money. They don't see the trade-off. But with web technologies, the ability to integrate all this different data, you can pull live data from websites, you can pull data from other sites, just through web interfaces. It's totally worth it. It makes a lot of business sense for end users. So that's kind of why we're stuck with Ignition.
One of the
yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
One of the nice things that I've found about working with a platform that leverages web technology is just to expand on a little bit of what Kyle said there, is to be able to integrate with all of these things that are outside of the platform. If we want to get the weather for a certain area of the world, if we want to talk to the National Weather Service and say, okay, what's our forecast for the next few days, in order to know what the temperatures are going to be and how to plan accordingly for the cooling and for the heating system for buildings at a site, we can do that. We can just call up that information without too much difficulty. We can pull in information from all sorts of disparate systems, largely because we do have this access to be built on a web platform.
That's great. I'll take a little closer look here at, I mentioned the term Java Web Start previously, but Carl Gould is the lead developer here with Inductive Automation. I'd like to ask you if you'd take a few minutes and expand on what is Java Web Start.
Sure. So Java Web Start is part of the Java platform. It's sort of an undersung feature, in my opinion. And we use it. It's really the technological underpinnings of our client architecture. It's how we achieve these zero installation web launched clients. But our clients themselves aren't actually web pages. They're not running inside of a web browser, and yet the user didn't have to install them separately. They just clicked on a link in a web page to launch the client. And so Java Web Start is what lets us do that. And from a technological perspective, it's actually a pretty simple technology. Like, you can imagine that you've been browsing the web and you click on a PDF file, and you wouldn't be too surprised if your browser then launched Adobe Acrobat to view that PDF file. Or if you downloaded a doc file, you know that Microsoft Word is going to open the doc file. Java Web Start runs on that same that same idea. There's a file called a JNLP file, and I hope I don't snow you over too much, but it's really not that complicated. There's a JNLP file. Once you click on it, there's a file association in your browser that launches Java, and instead of opening that file to view it like maybe Adobe Acrobat would, it starts up Java and downloads the application and runs it. So it's sort of like a one-click program installation, if you will. And the benefits to us of using this technology are pretty immense. Obviously, the benefits of having these zero installation clients we've already gone over. And then there's a bunch of ancillary benefits, such as the clients communicating purely over HTTP, which is firewall friendly. The clients are always in constant communication back to the gateway, which lets us have our central management of projects so that the clients are always up to date. And it lets us use the server as a central point of communication so that PLCs are only communicated to from a single point, which is good for network saturation, and all sorts of benefits that we derive from the architecture that Java WebStart gives us.
Great, Carl. Thanks. Appreciate that. So let's look at the third one of these barriers: traditional SCADA, licensing model stifles projects. Certainly, licensing is a real struggle for many companies. Vendors charge by the tag, by the client, etc., and many projects exceed the budget, or frankly, are just put on hold sometimes forever just because they can't afford the project. It also makes the marketplace a lot smaller of the kinds of companies that can even play in this world of improving their operations, or integrators that can work in this world because they simply can't afford projects at a certain price point. And this brings the average price point way down for projects as Jack, you were talking about with the example you gave earlier on a bid that you did. I'm going to let you go up first, Jack, on that and talk about licensing hassles and how you overcome them.
One of the latest projects that we got called into was a small manufacturer that had a lot of PLCs out on the production line, but they never had brought it into an HMI SCADA system to analyze and stuff. And so they'd gotten bids from a couple of the other major suppliers of HMI software, and when I went in to see them, I asked about what they were trying to do, and they said they wanted to have like 5 clients and talk to all the existing PLCs, and so their pricing that they'd gotten from the other competitors was in the $30,000 to $35,000 range for the software alone. And I said, you're probably going to think I'm a smart aleck, but you can't afford not to do this with Ignition, because for the same $30,000 to $35,000, we can give you the hardware, the software, install the system, get it up and running, get it talking, bring the databases from all your PLCs in, teach your guys to use Ignition a little bit, and maybe even send you to a training class at Ignition training. And I didn't hear from them. I was there for 20 minutes, and I didn't hear from them for about 3 months. And then I got the call that said, you're right, we can't afford to do it with anything else. And for the price that they originally looked at, we did all of that, and their engineer just attended the training class recently. So it created work for us. It created tremendous opportunity for the customer, and within a budget that the other people would have supplied them the software, and they would have been frustrated, loading it on their computers, and then what do they do with it, because they don't know what to do with it. So it's a tremendous difference, and it's creating work for us all over the place, but it's beneficial to us and way beneficial to our customers.
Thanks, Jack. Kyle, as the other integrator here on this virtual panel we got going, can you give your perspective on how it works with you, the licensing model works in your business with your customers, similar to what Jack was talking about?
Yeah, for sure. We got, some of the small manufacturing things we're doing. A lot of them are trying to start with small projects to kind of get a feeler for what Ignition can do. So, we'll go in there and bid, the small job, but then we'll say, okay, if you go to, a full-blown license package, this is the more stuff that you can do with it. And just once they know the flexibility that Ignition brings to the table, they jump all over it, and we're there, I wouldn't say all the time, but we're there quite a bit, just adding things that they didn't even think was possible to add to their HMI.
That's great. Kyle, one other add-on question, and if you don't have an exact answer, fine, but I'm just curious, in your opinion, at what price point does the SCADA project start to get stifled, just because it's too top-heavy in cost and and the value you're going to be able to bring is not sellable to the customer.
Like, what's the price point for Ignition?
No, I mean if you're looking at somebody at a bid not outside of Ignition, just in the traditional SCADA licensing model world, is there a point where you start seeing projects get stifled, or is that too dependent on the customer to be able to answer that?
Well, it's too dependent on the customer, and you know, I would say the price point we're at with Ignition, with the flexibility you gain from it, you know, if a company can look at, say, an $8,000 project from one vendor and a full-blown license from Ignition with all the extra stuff you can do with it, they always jump on Ignition, just because, you know, right now, like I said before, everything is data, everything is evolving in our world. Everything needs to have access to data to make intelligent business decisions. So a lot of vendor or companies that we're dealing with are starting to see that, and it's really opening the doors, the ability to actually have data and present it as information to the clients.
Sure, sure. Well, and that actually speaks to the bullet points that we have on this slide here. When you say stop engineering around the pocketbook, start engineering on actual needs, get more eyes on the data. More eyes on the data equals more innovation. More eyes equals better collaboration, and better collaboration and innovation equals greater efficiency and competitiveness. We talk about licensing models from the economic standpoint. But Tom, I want to turn to you because you do a lot of work in this area too. From a collaborative, expand on these bullet points. Collaboration is a key point. When you have unlimited licensing, it's nice in the pocketbook, but it's a lot more than just dollars that we're talking about here. We're talking about the ability to truly be able to set up your system so that you can seamlessly collaborate. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah. So if you have to purchase separate programs or you have to purchase client licenses, you know, how do you get the data out to the people, actionable data, to the employees that can make a difference on your operation, either quality or efficiencies or production, meeting shipments, that kind of thing. And if you have separate programs and you can't collaborate together, and the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, and you have to train them on all these different programs, it just creates more confusion and it doesn't flow as smoothly. So when you can collaborate and preventive maintenance can see what the production schedule is, and they can schedule around the production schedule, or production management department can see what the preventive maintenance is. The lab can see when tests are coming due and be sure to be out there on time. Even scheduling the tests, you know, those types of things become possible now, where if you have separate programs and you're not collaborating, it isn't possible. And you have people calling up on radios or cell phones, and it's just more chaos and things aren't flowing smoothly.
Great, thanks. I appreciate that. I just want to sort of summarize here and go back to the bottom line and reiterate what I started off with, because we're basically at about 15 minutes remaining to give you a chance. There are a number of questions in the queue here, which we'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. I also want to encourage you who have been listening to these various perspectives to go ahead and type in your questions, and we'll get to a lot of them, I'm sure, in the next 15 minutes. Bottom line again, though, is companies are demanding tools for better internal collaboration. Collaboration requires access by everyone. Existing manual processes need to be emulated in software. Having real-time information for real-time responses is now mandatory, and solutions must be rolled out rapidly and cost-effectively. So when you think about it, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to basically use the newer technologies, and what we do is use those newer technologies to open the door to that kind of innovation and collaboration so you can rapidly and cost-effectively address the issues you have, be you an integrator or an end user in your facilities. So let's start taking some of these other questions. Just one question I want to lead with and sort of just leave you with on this one is that what's missing? What's missing really is a name for this blended SCADA and database functionality. Blended SCADA and database functionality that can emulate existing processes, be developed rapidly, and be deployed widely is a hot commodity, as you can see. But frankly, there's no name or acronym that adequately refers to this. This is something new to the industry, and those recognizing this can gain the competitive advantage. Clearly, what we're trying to do with inductive automation is to bring both the licensing and business model and the technology together in this integrated way so you actually can have this blended SCADA and database functionality at your fingertips. So let's take, I'm going to just sort of pass questions around, but I'm also going to open the door to any of our panelists commenting on a question. Carl Gould, I'm going to start with you there. The question here says, how about using encryption at the application level in addition to network security? Can you comment on that question there?
Sure. I'm not entirely sure what they're referring to, but there's two things that come to mind, so I'll talk about both of them.
Okay, cool.
So one is that you can encrypt the communication between clients and servers using SSL. I think that's what he was asking, not about. But the other thing that they may have been talking about is we have a feature that allows an integrator to encrypt their project so that they can distribute, you can imagine that an integrator might develop some sort of project using Ignition that might be applicable across a number of potential customers. They can then encrypt that project so that it can be deployed to a customer without that customer reverse engineering how it was created. We call that feature the OEM lock.
Mm-hmm.
So if that didn't address the question, I'll have to be more specific.
Okay, great. So thanks for commenting on that. This is just a general question. Yes, we're going to make this webinar will be in our archive. We make them all available, so that general question is answered for all. You will be able to share this with others, and it's usually up today when we're finished. We can get up fairly soon after that. How quickly can data be acquired using a database setup? Can you capture real time? So that's Dimitri White asked that question, so I'm just going to open it and let someone talk first on that.
The term real time is a loaded term. I'm not going to get into that mess. But Jack was talking earlier about how they were capturing data on the order of 20 milliseconds, which I think is pretty close to the lower bound of speed, but that they're doing that with some success, right, Jack?
Yep. Yeah.
Jack, can you comment on that too?
Sure. The customer asked me to do 50 millisecond updates because they have a very high-speed, small number of tags that they need to watch. It's in voltage control. And I said, I don't think we can do that. For one thing, I don't think your PLCs have a scan rate that could keep up with that. Your networks are going to get in the way. And they proved me wrong. We're doing 20 millisecond because the PLCs they're using have 5 millisecond scan rates. And we literally get unique data 50 times a second into the SQL Server database. And I would have said we couldn't do that. But it's doing it. It's been doing it for a couple of months now. And the other ones, the 250 millisecond ones and the 1 second ones, which all of those fall into what I call real-time ability to capture the data. I mean, it blew my mind because, we're talking about Ignition as a general purpose, but we've just created a historian application that's blowing the competition away.
That's great, Jack. One more thing, in case anyone is very familiar with databases and might say you couldn't possibly be running that many insert queries per second. One of the features of Ignition that allows us to do that is the store and forward feature can be configured as a high-speed buffering cache, so that if you're capturing events from the PLC and from the network at 20 milliseconds, you can then cache up, maybe 50 of them, which then get inserted in a bulk transaction, which helps that be possible.
Carl, I'm going to throw another question your way. It's a broad question. Why is Ignition based on Java instead of Microsoft technologies? Can you answer that one?
Earlier we expounded upon the advantages we get being cross-platform. Java is really the reason why we have that advantage, and people who base their applications on Microsoft technologies don't. And that really is sort of the long and short of it. I mean, there's a number of advantages we get from Java. Obviously, Java Web Start is another Java-specific technology that we make great use of. There are some similar ideas in the Microsoft world of technologies, but they're not quite what Java WebStart is. But really being cross-platform, and that means running, when Windows 7 came out, we didn't have any problems with Windows 7 because Sun and now Oracle put in the work to make the Java runtime work on Windows 7 ahead of schedule. And, we have lots of customers running Ignition on Linux or HP Unix, and so that's just not possible using the Microsoft technologies.
Great, thanks. Tom?
I think, if you take a look at Microsoft technologies, the COM, the DCOM, ActiveX, the Silverlight for a while, it's not Silverlight anymore. It changes. I think they've got a lot of marketing pressure to try to, improve their products. So what products can we increase and improve and come out with to increase sales? And the thing about that all is that all those technologies are pretty much tied to Windows and just Windows. And I think that's where the other SCADA companies, they have gone along that path with Microsoft, and now they're kind of getting limited by that. The industry is changing. We're seeing other operating systems come out. And, Java runs on these different operating systems much better than like .NET in the Microsoft world. VBA is another thing. A lot of SCADA companies have VBA, but VBA is a Microsoft technology. So if people are wondering why we don't use VBA, that is the reason. So there's just, you kind of have to look at the long-term history of technology and how it's changed. And when you look at Microsoft, it's not necessarily the most favorable.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things that I noticed just working with this team here is that if you're creating technology from yesterday, you're not preparing for tomorrow. And we're creating everything we're doing for today and tomorrow, not to try and defend yesterday.
Yeah.
And if you're not trying to defend yesterday, you've got a lot of freedom with your customers because you're just looking at what they're doing, helping them figure out what they're trying to solve, and giving them the tools to automate those processes and integrate those databases and solve those problems. So a couple more questions, Sylvie, while we still have just a couple more minutes here. First off, just a comment that Richard Bueller said. He says, I have a customer that's running redundant app servers with Thin Manager with instant failover for 20 thin clients. He set up a demo on that with some production lines out there. So thanks for that comment, Richard. Appreciate you sharing it. That's great. I'm going to give this one to you, Tom. I think give me a comparison/definition between a sophisticated gated data collection system versus an MES. From Brett Mook as that question.
Okay. MES is Manufacturing Execution System. And MES is kind of the layer between the plant floor system and control systems and such, and HMIs, human machine interfaces, and what they call the ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, which ERP is, accepting schedules, your financials, or accepting orders, inventory management, some of those higher level things for a company. And the ERP system has, evolved to the point where it can span and be the same for multiple production facilities or sub-products within a company and so on and so forth. Where the HMI end of it in the SCADA data aware type things really aren't targeted for the MES world. The MES world is more like efficiencies, quality information, traceability, different things like that fit into that area. ERP is typically not tied to the plant floor, so you don't have real-time data necessarily. A little cumbersome to use. Plant floor integration a lot of times is a barcode reader and operator input for like quality information. So MES, we're trying to take that to the next level and tie plant floor operation, so like collecting quality samples automatically, reminding operators that they need to take quality samples, collecting the information so we can do OEE calculations, and all at the same time talking to the ERP system to make it a smooth transition between the two. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Thank you very much. We only have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to sort of ask people a final question, and then also you can make any final comments if you want to on that. So, and I'm not sure necessarily who to throw it to, but Kevin, I'm going to start with you. This is a security question. there is a couple questions here. One is there any security issue using Java? And the broader question is, how is the SCADA network protected from viruses in the case where the business networks and the SCADA networks are different? Is that a fair question there?
Sure. So the first part of that,
just a security issue using Java.
Yeah, the Java is a tried and true technology. It's been around for over 10 years at this point, 15 years, right? It's been around for a long time. And it's integrated in all sorts of different systems, hundreds, thousands of platforms of different software run on it. And just like any other software platform, if you write an insecure program, the program might be vulnerable. But Ignition is tried and true. It's been security tested. It's been through its paces. And Java itself is, as long as you go with the coding standards, is going to be a very solid platform.
I think it's worth noting, too, that the financial industry doesn't use anything but Java, I believe.
And they need security.
And they need security.
Yeah, it's the #1 language for back office enterprise applications. Yeah. And it's not to say that Java's security track record is completely unblemished. Like anything else, there have been issues found with certain versions of the JRE, and so like any kind of software, you want to keep your software patched. You don't want to continuously run, old versions. But certainly the recent releases of the JRE are extremely solid. Also, in general, Java is immune to one of the most common types of software vulnerabilities called a buffer underrun attack, which is how you see, the vast majority of attacks you see against software utilizes this technique. And because of the design of Java, it's essentially immune to that attack, which is relevant.
Great, Carl. Carl, so our last question for you, and if it's more than a minute answer, we'll have to go offline, and it's from Richard. The question I have is there any way to push data into SQL, IMSQL?
I'm not sure. I know that people are taking data out of SQL and displaying it using Ignition, but I don't have a ready answer for pushing data into.
So, Richard, we got to give you a little more of an answer on that offline and just look into it, because no quick answer on that right now. Coming out of it for display purposes, but not certainly going into it. And then, Kyle, I'm going to give you a chance to make any final. We really appreciate you as with all your integration experience and participating with us today. I know you're busy. Can you any final comments or anything for the audience and viewers today?
Yeah, from our company's perspective, we're pretty much an Ignition-only house. So obviously, my view is biased, but in our company alone, we've got 50 years of experience across all of us, and a lot of the guys used to be purely Wonderware, RSView, factory linked guys per se. They're specialized in that, and they've switched to Ignition, and we're not looking back. We fully recommend Ignition for any solution out there, and we're active in the forum. And yeah, we look forward to working with Inductive, and hopefully some of the new people on this webinar will join the team.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate that. And I'm going to reiterate, you mentioned the forum. Please take advantage of our forum. It's active. You can be involved in it. You can learn from it, participate. So I just want to emphasize that. And Jack, final comment from you?
Yeah. I think that, traditionally the software packages we've used have been to replace control panels and to do, simple, control. And Ignition does that very well. But it's almost a minor part of what Ignition can do. You can use this. I think that Tom and Steve Heckman have talked about access on steroids. You can build these front ends for your databases and build manual data entry, payroll. We've got people using it as a time clock system and inventory, management. It's just, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's almost you can do anything with it to tie your whole business together.
Thanks, Jack. I know the on steroids comment hasn't made it to the front of our marketing pieces yet, but it is passed around here. We know it can do just about anything you want it to do. So, Tom, how about any final comment from you?
Yeah, I think you have to look at why you even install software in the first place. And that is you have a problem you want to solve. You need to have solutions. You have your customers in the plant that are asking for solutions. And it typically is kind of difficult to come up with those solutions. You have to have separate pieces of program. I've heard of some installations where they have a program that collects the data, then they have a program for reporting, and they have a separate program for viewing and interacting with for the users and such. And it's very clunky. It's just not very seamless and doesn't work nicely together. And when you do get into the configuration of that, the maintenance of it, the reliability of it, it's just not as good as if you can put something in place that you can focus on the solutions that your users or customers are asking of you instead of trying to maintain this system. You get to deliver more to them. You get to look like the hero because you're providing more information to them that makes a difference in their life and the effectiveness of your company. So I think the new technology, that's the way you look at it. You look at the web versus always installing a program on your computer and how that has changed our lives. Well, look at that in the industrial world, and you'll see that having a flexible platform that is web launch-based and database-centric can provide that.
Sure. Thanks. I mean, certainly we see that the timing is perfect for leveraging these technologies in the industrial world, and I want to thank all of you for attending. I also know that most of you were invited maybe by one of our account executives, so please, Jim, Vanessa, Myron, Shane, Raman, whoever it is that you're working with, you got further questions, you want to know more, you'd like to set up a demo, you'd like to dig into some of these issues a little bit deeper, we really do consider it our responsibility and opportunity for us to serve you in that area. So anything you need to know about training, about Ignition, about demos, about anything we're doing here, about future releases, please be in communication with us. We absolutely welcome your feedback and questions. So with that, we've come to the end of our hour. Thanks so much. Everyone have a great holiday season. We are finished with today's webinar.